Hey, how's it going, all? Just want to do a quick one on typical day in the life of corporate America. So most of my stuff is really heavy and depressing, basically. But this is actually kind of depressing as well. But just kind of tongue in cheek about basically a typical day in the corporate life. And for the first few years of my career, I just didn't know better. I just assumed that this is the way it is, and all that. And then it's funny looking back now just how it's been exactly the same since 2007 when I joined corporate world, and in many ways in grad school as well. But just how it's been the same, and I'm just gonna go through like a typical day. um, but before I do that, actually, I want to talk about this like trite saying that people use, that God only gives what you can handle. And so that's usually there to describe stuff like on the higher end, like on the more difficult things to handle, um, emotionally, traumatizing or physically traumatizing or whatever. But I always found that saying to be ridiculous because there's a lot of people who've gone through things that like the human body is not designed for. So I don't know who came up with that. I'm assuming it's someone who knows very little about God. Um, but to me, also, what I think the accurate statement is that God gives you what you'll settle for. It's like, and this will sound really like mean or easy to say for me, but like slavery, for example, like the physical slavery that people have gone through, and especially the Israelites, who I feel are the Israelites, so-called Negroes in America, like the way that they were treated. I don't understand how this works because I would not. I don't understand how somebody could go through that and not kill themselves. Like, I know a lot did, but I don't understand how somebody could go through that and just be okay with it. And to me, this is where it reaffirms to me that God is a mind controller, that He gets people to do stuff that He just tells them, He sets the thresholds basically, and so people are going to go through it whether they like it or not. So He'll make it seem like the right thing to do. And so, to me, the more accurate statement that's more verifiable, is that God only gives you what you settle for. So, like, if you're willing to settle for something, then that's likely what you're going to get. And so, obviously, God can override that and give you, a lot more than what you would have bargained for, and sometimes He'll give you a lot less. And I feel like, for me, I've realized that I didn't even think this way because I didn't really think that God existed, in any real way. Now, with again Flat Earth, it's there's more negotiations happening with, I feel, with God and myself. And this job that I have, I knew from the get go that if it was just gonna be similar to like my last experiences where it was just they're basically essentially waiting for you to like fail. They're like setting you up to like just frustrate you, and all those kind of tactics that are used in corporate America. If there was even an ounce of that, I would have just left immediately, and then I would have very quickly, like, it would have been known that I would not return, and then I would have been starting the clock of like when I would run out of savings, and then if you know there was nothing better, nothing else going on, I would have figured out a way to take my own life. And so that was sort of the negotiation. And so God knew that, or I guess, all right, better way to say it, I knew that. And so to me, He only gives you what you settle for. And so there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who have to settle for things, because they're taking care of other people and all that. So I don't want to be insensitive to that. But to me, it's like the slavery that happened and has happened throughout human history. To me, you basically have to like kind of not believe that God exists to some extent, or you have to be really heavily like kind of dumbed down to accept certain conditions. And so that brutal physical slavery is an extreme example, but in my mind, like, there's no way with what I know now, there's no way I would put up with that. It's like, that's insane. Like, watching your wife have like a cat sewn into her stomach so they could compete with like when the cat will like which cat will scratch themselves out faster, and like gator bait and all this kind of stuff, like just the absolute torture, that they were put through. Like, who even thinks of this kind of stuff, and like even to a much much lesser degree, like the slavery that I feel is happening, mental slavery right now in corporate America, where there's no creativity. You're not allowed to like think. You're not allowed to be free, like just to get up and go around, go walk for a little while, and without people wondering where you are, and stuff like that, and all of that kind of stuff. Like, to me, like that, there's a huge amount of lack of faith that's required in order for that to carry on, and so again, I'm not passing judgment because I'm obviously in this situation myself, and I'm going to explain my day and poke fun of it, but it's to me, like, slavery can only exist when people don't believe in God, at least to some extent, because like that doesn't make sense that God would be like okay with you just like settling for like mental death or physical torture. It's like that doesn't make sense when you're interacting with God directly. So to me, he gives you what you settle for. And, I don't think it's like righteous to settle for slavery, mental slavery or physical slavery or anything. To me, the only righteous thing to do is to die. It's like Jesus Christ was presented with opportunities to be a slave to Satan, and Satan promised him certain things, and obviously Satan's a liar, and his representation on earth through all the left-hand side people, which I hope I'm not one of, they're liars as well, whether overtly or not. But Jesus was tempted with slavery as well, to be under somebody, something, and receive certain goods. So he was essentially given a job offer, like, for lack of a better phrase, from Satan, when he was tempted after he was done fasting. And so, he obviously refused. It's like, that's, and he didn't die that in that moment, but he died eventually. And to me, it's the natural chain of events. It's like when you refuse slavery in a system that is designed to enslave everybody, which probably is the way it's been almost all the time, except maybe at the very, very beginning. But it looks like God has set this up, like, has always had these kind of, at least pockets of the world where this kind of stuff existed. And, like, to me, those are, I would suspect, training grounds for spirits or people to, like, wake up to the fact that, you don't have to be a slave if you don't want to, but it may cost you your life, and it very likely will cost you your life. But that's okay, because it's better to die than to have, like, to be in physical bondage. And in my opinion, what's worse is mental bondage. But I'm not, like, minimizing or trivializing the horrors, that people went through in transatlantic slave trade, for example. That to me is like, that's not even close. Like, that's not even like, I think about it, like, that's just me figuring out the fastest way to die when I see any of that stuff coming my way, And even if that's like around me or I avoid it slightly, it's like, why would you want to be alive? Like, you're going to be around some of the most demonic people, like, and they're like, overtly demonic, It's like, at least the stuff now is like subtle, secret handshakes and, like, kind of subtle, beast system in the corporate world. Is not as subtle anymore, but it's not like that, and this corporate stuff is like a slow death. And so just for me, I realized, like, I can't already ringing off of flat earth and knowing that God has deceived me my whole life, and not getting not being able to, like, really think, I realize now throughout my whole life, and be free, in my mind, and all of that sort of pent up anger, I don't want more of it. Like it's like to me, it's like I would be really, just weak minded and just weak in general to take more of this abuse from God, and just be like, yeah, I duped you on the shape of the earth, and like, all of Christianity essentially that you've been learning throughout your whole life, a lot of it is wrong. And then now I'm just gonna keep reaming you in the corporate world, and you just suck it up and take, all the basically lack of creativity, soul sucking, stuff that goes on there, just take more of that. It's like that's a negotiation. That's what I've negotiated with God, that, it has to stop, and there is no way I can go back from this. Like, I just, knowing what I know now, like, I have zero interest even in a decent job that I have for now. It could change any day. Like, I don't have any interest in serving a system that is completely satanic. The very system that is the one that has indoctrinated me throughout my whole life. I have no like motivation to have like positive thoughts about that system when I go to work every day. I'm very thankful in the sense now that I know it's not any individual. It's not the boss. It's not the owner of the corporation. It's not even the president of the United States. It's not the leader of NATO or whatever. It's God doing this. Like, God has created this environment because only He could. Who would create a system this really stupid? And coordinated. It's stupid and it's coordinated. And so it's not that God's stupid, but it's the fact that it's coordinated at such a mass wide scale that it has to be Him that is creating this environment. And He put Jesus Christ in that environment as well. So like, it's not like this is a new thing, and like, He's given us Him as an example, and he bowed out, like obviously the physical pain that He went through, I can't imagine. And that's to me, that you can watch my other video that I'm about to post about this sort of graduation I feel like certain spirits are on to return to the Most High. That might be partial explanation for why that's happening, why that happened to Him. And obviously we feel from the Bible that His example on earth is important for us to have something to lean on to for guidance on what we're supposed to do. Even though quite often I don't do that. But it's there. I feel like there's many purposes, for Jesus Christ, His existence on earth, and also like the tremendous amount of pain that He went through, I suspect, when He died. But like, it's not like he politicked his way to like stay on the earth longer, or to like be enslaved. He would not. He just didn't. He had the offer to be enslaved, and he was even given quote unquote riches. But obviously he knew that he probably has incredible insight, and knew obviously that was just a test, or even just an interaction needed for us. Maybe not even for him, because he already knew that what Satan was saying was a lie. But however that played out, he did not like take the offer to be enslaved, basically. And so basically for me, I've realized, like, in my life, I know that the corporate world is slavery, and it's not getting better, because the people who are enslaved a lot of them are co-signing it. So in my mind, this will never turn around, and we have the Bible as I feel, to me, the book of Revelation as a narrative, is that this whole system and environment is designed for the chip, and that's the ambition of the beast system, the 666 corporate system, is to microchip all of its constituents. And so that's God's will. That's the way He set the storyline to go. So I'm not going to fight that anymore. And it's I'm 99.99999% sure that we're in that time right now. So there's no miracles happening turning this situation around. So I basically, in my mind, I've said, and I wish it was more honorable, and I've said this in the past, that I wish I actually had a choice. A lot of this is like, I can't even find a job, even if like I really wanted one. Let's say I lose this one. It's highly likely that I would not find another one. So it's like I really had no choice. Like, basically the towel was being thrown in for me, but to me, I would have thrown it in anyway, because it's like this stuff is like absurd. And so to me, a typical corporate day is like coffee, and most people look forward to their coffee the most because that's um, just that feeling alone is better than the whole day that's coming up. They check their email, they hope that there's no deadlines or requests or follow up or negative exchanges. So once I check my email and none of that, I'm like breathe a sigh of relief. Then I go check the news, personal email. I look on eBay for like discounted Scotty Cameron putter or something. Like I just goof around. I try and strike up a conversation with somebody who talks a lot, so that'll kill more time. Try and set up some meetings just to kind of look like, I'll have stuff on the calendar. Try and kill time before lunch. I take an early lunch at 11 just so, when I get back, there'll be less people in the office who take lunch at noon. So that kind of kills 2 hours. Then I take another 30 minutes to try and get quote unquote revved up, basically kill even more time. So around now it's like 1:30. I read more of the news, websites, Reddit or whatever. For like, to me, that's the only real news that's out there. Real news are people's stories. Then I try and do about 30 minutes to an hour of actual work. I always have Excel and my Windows Explorer open in case somebody walks by. I do whatever I can to kill time until 4 o'clock because then the 1 hour countdown begins until 5. And then on a good day, I'll leave past 5 just to make it seem like I'm busy. And then I drive home and I reflect on how little creativity I used that day or even lost that day, and then repeat. And like, this obviously like kind of joking, but like there's this is actually kind of literally true, like the way my day is, and I suspect a lot of people's days are, is that they're just kind of like just on repeat, and they're just not being creative like ever. It's like, and like what I've said before is that corporate America basically, you can't sound dumb, that's bad, but you also can't be really smart and creative and change things because people are very concerned about job security. So you ultimately have to play along with your boss, his initiative, if he has enough power, his or her. And, and then if they're about to be replaced, you got to kind of follow the tide of like his boss or her boss. So you basically have to just kind of like follow like the tide, whichever direction the tide's going in. And so that's basically what corporation life in corporate America has become, is just like you're like kind of like a little like fish, literally a little fish in a lake, and like whatever direction the current's going, you just got to kind of go in that direction, even if it's like going nowhere or whatever it is, even if it doesn't involve you, or even if you don't agree with the stance position, you just go. So, this is a pretty typical day. This is why, there's really no job security out there, because pretty much every job is kind of useless. And the higher you go, they're less and less useful because you're just kind of like talking about stuff. You're not like actually doing anything. It's not like the CEOs in all these companies actually have like strong technical experience and can like, use it if needed. It's like, it becomes fluffier and fluffier, and the requirement to lie or to put up a front is like required more and more the higher up you go. So, this whole system is like not promoting creativity at all. It's just strictly just, go with the flow, whatever that flow is, and just hope that you have a job to come to the next day.